So friends, a new witness against Donald Trump in Trump's federal prosecution down in Florida. A witness who is a longtime Trump loyalist just broke his silence. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, a new witness, someone who worked at Mar-a-Lago and someone who was in Donald Trump's orbit for 2 decades just broke his silence and provided some damning information about the 3 charged co-defendants, the 3 co-conspirators in the federal prosecution down in Florida: Donald Trump, Walt Nauta, and Carlos de Oliveira. Now, the witness had previously been known only by a number that Special Counsel Jack Smith had assigned him in that Florida federal indictment. That, of course, is the case in which Donald Trump is charged with unlawfully retaining classified documents, obstructing justice, and violating our nation's espionage laws. And the witness previously had only been known as Trump employee number 5. Well, now we know Trump employee number 5 is a gentleman named Brian Butler. And Brian Butler just shared his story with CNN. Here is some of the new reporting. Headline: Trump employee number 5, who unknowingly helped move classified documents, speaks out. And that article begins: a longtime Mar-a-Lago employee who is a central witness in the investigation into former President Donald Trump's handling of classified documents is now speaking publicly because he believes that voters should hear the truth about his former boss and the case before the November election. Brian Butler, who is referenced as Trump employee 5 in the classified documents indictment brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith, told CNN in an exclusive interview that he doesn't believe the criminal case against Trump is a witch hunt, as the former president has claimed. Okay, well, now that we know that employee number 5 in the federal indictment down in Florida is Brian Butler, the question is, who is Brian Butler? Brian Butler has known Trump since 2002 and can recount detailed conversations with him, his family, and guests at Mar-a-Lago. Butler, a Florida native, took a job working for Trump 21 years ago. Butler, 41, is a natural narrator of the world of Trump in South Florida. But Butler ultimately decided he had to make a break from Trump because the MAGA approach to politics in recent years, the intensifying FBI investigation, and Trump's apparently cavalier attitude toward national security soured Butler on staying at his Mar-a-Lago job after Trump's presidency. Disillusioned with how the club had grown into a more transactional environment for Trump during his presidency, Butler quit Mar-a-Lago in November 2022. That year, he watched his friends and former co-workers' lives become disrupted because of the developing criminal case. And even though we've now learned that Butler has been cooperating with federal law enforcement authorities all along, he was asked why he decided to come forward now and tell his story publicly. He said, well, for him, Trump, to get up there all the time and say the things he says about this being a witch hunt and everything, he, Trump, just can't take responsibility for anything. So now that we know just a little bit about who Brian Butler is, here is some of what he just told CNN. Butler gave testimony to federal investigators that informed crucial portions of last year's criminal obstruction charges against Trump and his 2 co-defendants, Walt Nauta, a personal aide to Trump, and Carlos de Oliveira, a property manager at Mar-a-Lago who had been Butler's closest friend until recently. Butler, who was employed at Mar-a-Lago for 20 years, has spoken repeatedly with investigators, paying for his own attorney and breaking with the orbit around Trump that he knows so well, setting him apart from his former colleagues and friends as his former boss had been named in multiple federal investigations. Butler told CNN how he unknowingly helped Nauta deliver boxes of classified information from Mar-a-Lago to the former president's plane in June 2022, the same day that Trump and his attorney were meeting with the Justice Department at Mar-a-Lago about the classified documents. That day, June 3rd, 2022, Butler received what he remembers as a strange request from Nauta, who wanted to know if he could borrow an Escalade from the car service Butler ran for Mar-a-Lago. Trump and his family were about to fly to New Jersey that day for the summer, and it was typically Butler and his valets who handled getting their luggage onto the plane. But it was an unusual request from Nauta for the car, Butler says, because Nauta typically didn't handle moving luggage and asked Butler for the car in a guarded way. Butler says Nauta and Oliveira loaded up the vehicle before driving it to the West Palm Beach airport. Butler arrived with his own car filled with Trump family luggage, then helped Nauta load Trump's plane with the luggage, as well as bankers' boxes of documents that were in the Escalade. Butler says he didn't realize the bankers' boxes contained anything out of the ordinary. And this quote from Butler, quote, "I left Mar-a-Lago. I texted him, Nauta, hey, I'm on my way. He followed me. He pulled out and got behind me. We got to the airport. I ended up loading all the luggage I had, and he had a bunch of boxes," Butler said of Nauta. Quote, "They were the boxes that were in the indictment, the white bankers' boxes. That's what I remember loading," Butler added. So friends, before we continue with the article, let me just put a finer point on the timeline here, because this was in June 2022, at the very time DOJ and FBI officials were at Mar-a-Lago, essentially begging and pleading Donald Trump to return all of the classified documents he had stolen, he had wrongfully taken when he left the presidency. At that same time, Trump was arranging to have 10 or 15 boxes worth of those materials whisked away from Mar-a-Lago and flown up to his club in New Jersey, Bedminster. That's what Brian Butler is talking about here, helping load those boxes onto Trump's plane, not knowing at the time what was in them. He came to understand later what was in those boxes. And remember, these boxes were being whisked away to New Jersey, to Bedminster, about 2.5 months before the FBI ultimately obtained a search warrant for Mar-a-Lago, went down and executed that search warrant, conducted that search, and found tons of additional classified materials. You know what they didn't find? The 10 to 15 boxes that Donald Trump had, whisked away from Mar-a-Lago to his club in New Jersey. The article continues. 3 months after the FBI removed hundreds of government records from Mar-a-Lago in August 2022, Butler left his job as a club valet and manager, in part due to a growing restlessness to move on. Butler says he has considered for months going public about his role in the obstruction case against Trump, as he has carefully followed developments in the criminal case. Butler says he decided to sit down with CNN exclusively in West Palm Beach on Monday out of a wish to tell the truth and share what he knows to those who may doubt the facts of the case. Butler, who has not previously been named publicly, is referenced 6 times in the Justice Department's indictment as Trump Employee 5. The references made to Butler in the indictment capture only an inkling of what he knows and could be asked to speak about on the witness stand, all of which he says he's already shared with prosecutors, giving them a window into scenes where other witnesses may have been closed-lipped or allegedly misleading. Now, friends, I want to talk about the 3 main takeaways from this new reporting, this information that has been revealed by Trump employee number 5, Brian Butler. But first, just for context, let me read the 2 short passages in the Florida federal indictment that reference Trump employee number 5, who we now know to be Brian Butler. This from page 28, paragraph 81. On Saturday, June 25th, 2020, Nauta, Walt Nauta, one of the charged co-defendants, traveled from Bedminster, New Jersey to Palm Beach, Florida. Prior to Nauta's trip, Oliveira, that's Carlos Oliveira, that was Brian Butler's best friend. Oliveira is the other charged co-defendant, co-conspirator in the Florida prosecution. Prior to Nauta's trip, Oliveira, that's Carlos Oliveira, the other indicted co-defendant, co-conspirator, together with Trump and Nauta, and Oliveira was, until not that long ago, Brian Butler's best friend. Prior to Nauta's trip, Oliveira told a valet at the Mar-a-Lago club, Trump employee number 5, Brian Butler, that Nauta was coming down. Oliveira asked Trump employee number 5 not to tell anyone Nauta was coming down because Nauta wanted the trip to remain secret. Oliveira told Trump employee 5 that Nauta wanted Oliveira to talk to Trump employee number 4 to see how long camera footage was stored. And of course, there's a whole nother storyline where Trump and his co-conspirators, his co-defendants, were trying to erase what was very likely incriminating security footage. Here is the other reference in this indictment to Trump employee number 5, Brian Butler. This from paragraph 91 of the indictment. Just over 2 weeks after the FBI discovered classified documents in the storage room and Trump's office on August 26, 2022, Nauta called Trump employee 5 and said words to the effect of, someone just wants to make sure Carlos is good. In response, Trump employee 5, Brian Butler, told Nauta that Oliveira was loyal and that Oliveira would not do anything to affect his relationship with Trump. That same day, at Nauta's request, Trump employee 5 confirmed in a Signal chat group with Nauta and the PAC representative that Oliveira was loyal. That same day, Trump called Oliveira and told Oliveira that Trump would get Oliveira an attorney. So friends, let's start our discussion about 3 of the takeaways from this new reporting with that last point. Donald Trump reaching out through an intermediary and asking, Oliveira, is he good? Is he good? What does that sound like? Doesn't that sound like mob talk for, is Oliveira with us or is he against us? And when Trump is assured that, no, Oliveira's good, Trump says, I'm going to get him a lawyer. So what's an important difference between Brian Butler and his former best friend, Carlos Oliveira? Brian Butler paid for his own lawyer, independent of Trump world, and Oliveira got himself a Trump world lawyer. Butler was paying for his own attorney and breaking with the orbit around Trump, while Oliveira has used an attorney provided through Trump's network. And indeed, Brian Butler says he has resisted repeated inquiries from Oliveira, nudging him to use an attorney found and paid for by Trump. Now, friends, where have we seen this movie before? There's another witness in the Florida federal indictment designated as Trump Employee 4. We learned over time that that was the former IT director down at Mar-a-Lago, a guy named Yuscil Taveras. And you may not remember this reporting from some time ago, but Taveras originally had a lawyer provided by Trump World. Taveras, we later learned, went into the grand jury and told a bunch of lies that seems like they were designed to cover up what was really going on at Mar-a-Lago. And then Jack Smith filed a motion with the chief judge in federal court in Washington, D.C. to try to get Taveras conflict-free counsel. And ultimately, the judge ruled, yeah, Taveras, Trump employee number 4, is entitled to conflict-free counsel. And when Taveras got conflict-free counsel, what did he do? He said, I want to go back into the grand jury, retract my lies, and testify truthfully about what I know, what had been going on down at Mar-a-Lago. You know, friends, that highlights not just the importance of our Sixth Amendment right to counsel, but our Sixth Amendment right to conflict-free counsel. An attorney who is looking out for the best interests of their client, exclusively their client's interests, not the interests of some bigger criminal fish that the client can implicate. So takeaway number 1, the importance of conflict-free counsel. Because neither of those two witnesses, Trump employee number 4, Taveras, who was the former IT director at Mar-a-Lago, nor Trump employee number 5, Brian Butler, neither one have been charged with any crimes. Now, I'm not saying there was necessarily enough to charge them with crimes. However, what did we just hear? Well, at one point, Brian Butler was acting as the go-between, passing messages about, is Carlos good? Is Carlos okay? Is he with us? Yeah? Okay, Trump's going to get him a lawyer. I'm not saying that's necessarily criminal, but it sure is cruddy. It sure is a little dirty. He hasn't been charged with any crimes as far as we know. Of course, he's had conflict-free counsel all along, and he's been reportedly cooperating with federal law enforcement authorities, the FBI and the prosecutors all along. What about Trump employee number 4, Yuscil Taveras? We were just talking about what we know about him. He seems to have criminal exposure. Why? Because he had a Trump World lawyer and he went into the grand jury and he lied. What does that mean? It means he likely committed perjury, perhaps obstruction of justice, perhaps accessory after the fact. We would need to know more about the evidence. But then what happened? He got conflict-free counsel. He retracted his lies and he cleaned it up and he told the truth about what he knew was going on down in Mar-a-Lago instead of trying to cover it up. And as far as we know, Mr. Taveras has not been charged with any crimes. Takeaway number 2, telling the truth matters. Whether you tell it from jump or you start down the road of trying to cover up the crimes of others, but you ultimately tell the truth, you retract your lies, you testify truthfully before the grand jury, telling the truth matters. Conflict-free counsel is critically important. Takeaway number 1, telling the truth matters because guys like Taveras and Butler have not been charged with any crimes. As far as we know, they've just been run as witnesses, not as defendants or cooperating defendants. Somebody who's been charged with a crime agrees to plead guilty and testify truthfully about others. Yes, telling the truth matters. Friends, I could tell you stories for hours about how before every grand jury appearance, and over 3 decades, I put a lot of witnesses in the grand jury, I would beg and plead with the witnesses, do not lie to this grand jury, because if you do, it could constitute perjury and obstruction and accessory after the fact. Please save yourself all of that trouble. Just tell them the truth. because the truth matters. Takeaway number 3, this is one that you're probably already thinking about, and we've talked about this one before. It has now been reaffirmed that Donald Trump took boxes from Mar-a-Lago, lots of boxes, before the FBI and the Department of Justice could retrieve them, and sent them up to his New Jersey club, Bedminster. Where are they? As best we can tell, we've never heard anything about a search warrant being executed by the FBI at Bedminster to try to collect up, to try to seize that evidence of crime, those boxes of classified materials. So where are they? Now, friends, I have a feeling in future litigation, particularly when the Florida case finally goes to trial, we're going to learn where those boxes ended up. We're going to learn why the FBI never obtained or executed a search warrant at Bedminster in New Jersey. And I have a feeling those explanations, when we hear about just why it is there was never a search warrant conducted at Bedminster, I have a feeling the pieces will fall into place. I can think of at least 3 reasons. I'm not going to spend all of the time laying out the 3 possibilities, but having investigated cases criminally for decades, both in and out of the grand jury, I can see a number of possibilities regarding why the FBI might not have gotten a search warrant for Bedminster. But rather than engage in all that speculation, I want to wait until there's more reporting on it, or until the case goes to trial, and then I think the pieces are going to fall into place. But at this point, let's just wrap it up by saying this important information that was provided courtesy of Brian Butler, breaking his silence, because he wanted to dispel the notion that this is a witch hunt. He wanted to dispel the notion that there's no evidence supporting these charges. And you heard him say directly, Donald Trump will never take responsibility for anything he did. It sure looks like Trump cost Brian Butler his best friend, the relationship he had with Carlos de Oliveira. De Oliveira chose not to tell the truth, it appears, chose to be represented by somebody from Trump world, and look where it got him. He'll be sitting in the defendant's chair right next to Donald Trump and Walt Nauta, going to trial down in Florida when and if Judge Cannon actually sets a trial date and moves the case in the direction of a trial. But, you know, telling the truth matters. Indeed, telling the truth to the FBI, to the federal prosecutors, perhaps most importantly, to the grand jury and to a trial jury, like justice, matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.